I always thought betrayal would come from a stranger, some nameless guy she met at a bar, some random mistake she'd regret the next morning. But I never thought it would be him. My boss. The man I had spent years working under. The man who shook my hand and told me I had a future. The man who sat across from me in meetings while secretly fucking my wife. The discovery didn't come with some dramatic moment. No lipstick on his collar. No awkward slip of the tongue. No guilty confessions. It was a mistake on his part. A late-night email sent to my work account with the wrong attachment. A file meant for him, not me. A file that contained a picture of them together, tangled in hotel sheets, time-stamped from the night she had told me she was having dinner with friends. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Instead, I felt a cold, steady calm. Because while they thought they were playing me, they had no idea who they were up against. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, staring at the undeniable proof that my wife, the woman who had once sworn to love me, was nothing more than a liar, a cheater, a woman who had chosen him over me. And my boss? The man who had told me I had potential? He had looked me in the eye for months, knowing he was sleeping with my wife behind my back, knowing he was betraying me in the worst way possible, and he had felt nothing. No guilt, no hesitation. He thought he could take everything from me and walk away unscathed. But he was about to learn that he had chosen the wrong man to betray. I didn't confront her. I didn't march into my boss's office and demand answers. No, I played it smart. If they wanted to be sneaky, I could be even better. They thought they were operating in the dark, but they had no idea I had just flipped the lights on. The first thing I did was start collecting everything. Every text, every call log, every business trip my boss took that conveniently lined up with my wife's girls' weekends. I cloned her phone, intercepted her messages, and built a case so airtight neither of them would be able to talk their way out of it. It wasn't hard. She was comfortable, careless, assuming I would never check. I saw everything. The way she gushed over him, the way she talked about me like I was some backup plan, the way she laughed at how oblivious I was. And my boss? He wasn't just having an affair. He was boasting about it, bragging to his closest colleagues about how he was handling business, both in the office and in the bedroom, making a complete joke out of me while they all laughed behind my back. I felt nothing but calculated precision. This wasn't about emotions anymore. This was about revenge. But that wasn't enough. Ruining my marriage? That was personal. But ruining my career? That was war. And if my boss thought he could sleep with my wife and keep his job, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Because by the time I was done, he wouldn't just lose my wife. He'd lose everything. I started with the money. I had access to company financials, nothing illegal, nothing that required hacking or breaking rules, just careful observation. I knew his habits. I knew how reckless he was, how he took shortcuts, how he buried expenses where they didn't belong. And it wasn't hard to find exactly what I was looking for. A pattern of misuse, money being shuffled into accounts it shouldn't be, falsified travel expenses that just so happened to coincide with his business trips, which, in reality, were just elaborate covers for his affair with my wife. I spent weeks documenting everything. Screenshots, reports, bank statements. I cross-referenced locations, timestamps, everything I needed to make sure when the moment came, there would be no escape. And then, I moved on to my wife. She had no idea I knew. No idea I was watching her every move, tracking her every lie. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, still sent me "love you" texts during the day, still came home at night and slept in my bed. And I let her. I let her believe everything was normal. I let her think she was winning. She had no idea I had already set the trap. And soon, she was going to walk straight into it. They thought they were in control. My wife thought she had me wrapped around her finger, sneaking around with my boss, laughing at me behind my back while she played the perfect wife at home. My boss thought he was untouchable, believing his position made him immune, thinking I was just another guy he could step on without consequence. But they had no idea that every move they made, every lie they told, every smug little moment they shared, I was watching. I wasn't just sitting in the dark, waiting to catch them in the act. No, I was setting the stage for their downfall. I started with my wife. She was predictable. She thought she was clever, deleting messages, covering her tracks, making excuses that were just believable enough to avoid suspicion. But she didn't realize I had already been inside her phone, inside her accounts, reading everything. I knew the things she told him, the way she made fun of me, the way she told him she had never felt this alive before. It should have hurt. It should have made me angry. But it didn't. It only made me more focused. I let her think she was safe. Let her continue sneaking out to meet him. Let her believe she was still getting away with it. She had no idea that the business trip she thought she was going on next weekend, the one she had been so excited for, was going to be her biggest mistake. Then, I turned to my boss. I had already been collecting dirt on him for weeks, tracking his financials, finding every little crack in his empire. He was a fraud. A man who had built his success on deception, on cutting corners, on manipulating the people around him to protect his power. And now, he had given me the perfect weapon to take him down. I dug deeper, pulling records, going back years, finding every instance of misused funds, of backroom deals, of the unethical, illegal shortcuts he had taken to maintain his status. I compiled everything into a file so detailed, so damning, that by the time I was done, there wouldn't be a single way for him to escape the consequences. But I wasn't going to just report him. No, that would be too easy. I wanted both of them to feel it, to experience the slow, crushing realization that their entire world was about to collapse. So I let things play out. I let them have their stolen moments, let them think they had one. And then, I waited for the perfect moment to strike. The day before their trip, I walked into my boss's office, sitting across from him like I had done 100 times before. He looked up, giving me that same cocky, self-assured smirk, the one he had worn every single day while he was sleeping with my wife. "Something on your mind?" he asked, as if he had nothing to hide. I smiled, leaning forward, placing a folder on his desk. "Yeah, I just thought you'd want to see this." He frowned, reaching for it, flipping it open. I watched his face change as he scanned the contents. Financial records, emails, proof of every illegal thing he had done, all laid out in front of him. His fingers tightened on the pages, his jaw clenching. "What is this?" he said, his voice suddenly lower. I leaned back, watching him squirm. "This? Oh, just proof. Proof of every law you broke, every deal you manipulated, every penny you stole from this company. Oh, and proof that you've been fucking my wife." He went pale. "You?" I smiled wider. "Oh yeah, I know everything. And now? So do a lot of other people." I stood up, adjusting my tie. "You should probably check your email." I walked out of his office as he scrambled for his phone, his face contorting into pure panic as he saw the forwarded emails, the copies of every single document I had just sent to corporate, to HR, to the company's legal team. His entire career was about to crumble around him. But I wasn't done. Because while he was dealing with the collapse of his career, my wife was about to face something even worse. She had no idea that the hotel she had booked, the one she thought was for just her and him, now had a third guest. Me. She thought she was meeting her lover for a weekend getaway, a little escape from her double life. A place where she could pretend she was someone else, where she didn't have a husband waiting at home. But she had no idea I was already there, waiting, watching as her perfect lie unraveled in real time. I arrived at the hotel before they did. I had checked the reservation under my boss's name weeks ago, seen exactly which room they would be in, what time they were arriving, how long they had planned to stay. She thought she had covered her tracks. She thought she was being careful. But she was so comfortable in her lies, so certain that I would never suspect a thing, that she didn't realize she had left every detail wide open for me to find. I checked into the room next to theirs, setting up everything I needed. A camera hidden in the air vent, another one tucked inside the lamp on the nightstand. I wasn't just here to catch them in the act. I was here to expose them completely. I watched from my window as she arrived, stepping out of the car, her smile wide, her body practically glowing with excitement. She was dressed for him, not for me, her hair styled exactly how she knew he liked it, wearing the perfume I had bought her on our anniversary but had barely smelled on her since. She stood by the entrance, scrolling through her phone, probably texting him, probably telling him how much she had missed him, how she couldn't wait to be alone with him. She had no idea that I was the one reading every word. Minutes later, my boss arrived. He stepped out of his car, adjusting his tie, looking around like he owned the place, like he had earned this. He walked up to her, placing a hand on her waist, leaning in for a kiss. I hit record. They laughed together, exchanging whispers before heading inside, completely unaware of the fact that their little secret was now permanent. I gave them time. Time to check in, time to get comfortable, time to let their guard down. And then, when I knew they were inside their room, when I knew they had nowhere to run, I made my move. I walked down the hallway, stopping right in front of their door. And then, I knocked. I heard shuffling inside, the sound of hurried movements, confused whispers. My wife's voice, laced with confusion. "Did you order something?" His voice, lower, unsure. "No. Stay here." I knocked again, harder this time. The door swung open, and there he was. My boss. The man who had taken everything from me. And the moment he saw my face, he knew. He went pale, his eyes widening, his entire body freezing in place. My wife appeared behind him, her expression shifting from confusion to pure terror as she locked eyes with me. She opened her mouth, but I spoke first. "Smile," I said, holding up my phone. "You're on camera." She gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. My boss stammered, taking a step back, his face contorting in panic. "James." I stepped forward, shoving the door open wider. "Oh, don't stop on my account. You seem to be having such a great time." She shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. I can explain." I laughed. A real, deep, genuine laugh. "Explain? Explain what? That you've been sneaking around with my boss behind my back for months? That you've been lying to me every single day? That you thought I'd never find out?" I turned the phone toward her, showing her the live footage of them together, the moment they had arrived, the moment they had touched, the moment they had exposed themselves. "Oh no, sweetheart. You don't get to explain anything." My boss tried to step in, his voice shaking. "Look, man, let's just—" I cut him off. "No, you don't get to talk either. You don't get to sit in meetings with me, telling me I have a bright future, telling me I have a shot at a promotion, while you're out here screwing my wife in cheap hotels." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, but he had no excuse. There was no way out of this. I turned back to my wife. "And you. You had the audacity to come home to me every night, to tell me you loved me, to act like we were still building a life together, when all along, you were nothing but a lying, cheating whore." Her lip trembled, her hands shaking as she reached for me. "James, please." I stepped back. Don't touch me. Don't say my name. Don't even try to cry. You did this. You chose this. And now, you're going to deal with the consequences." She shook her head violently. "What are you talking about?" I smiled, holding up my phone. "Oh, you'll see soon enough." I turned and walked away, leaving them standing there, their faces twisted in panic. They thought this was the worst moment of their lives. They had no idea what was coming next. She thought getting caught was the worst part. She had no idea I was about to ruin both of them forever. The panic in her eyes, the sheer terror in his face. It was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. They still thought they could recover, thought they could explain their way out of this, that after the initial shock faded, they could just go back to their lives and pretend this never happened. But I wasn't giving them that option. No, I was about to make sure this was a permanent stain on everything they had built. I didn't go home. There was nothing left for me in that house. Instead, I checked into a different hotel, pulled out my laptop, and got to work. First, I sent the video, not to just anyone, to everyone. I uploaded it to a private link and forwarded it straight to HR, corporate, and the board of directors. The footage of my boss, a high-ranking executive, checking into a hotel with the wife of one of his employees, a direct violation of company policy and ethics regulations. But I didn't stop there. I attached the financial reports I had compiled, the proof of his misuse of company funds, the falsified expense reports, every single fraudulent transaction he had tried to cover up. I didn't even need to say much. The evidence spoke for itself. Then, I moved on to my wife. She had spent months keeping her affair a secret. Now, I was about to make sure she had nowhere left to hide. I sent the video to her family, to her parents who had always thought she was the perfect daughter, to her friends who had blindly defended her, to every person in her life who still believed she was worth something. Then, just for good measure, I posted it anonymously. Not in an obvious way. Not in a way that could be traced back to me, just a leak in the right places, the kind of thing that spreads on its own, the kind of thing that lingers on the internet forever. By morning, the damage had already started. My boss didn't even make it to work. By the time he woke up, his inbox was flooded with messages from HR, legal, and corporate executives demanding answers. His name was already circulating in business circles, the whispers of a massive scandal growing louder. He had built his career on an image of success and discipline, and now, in less than 24 hours, it was all crumbling. And my wife? She was unraveling even faster. She called me 20 times before noon. When I didn't pick up, she started sending messages. First, it was apologies. Long-winded excuses, frantic confessions, saying she had made a mistake, saying she never meant to hurt me. Then, when I didn't respond, the messages turned angry. She accused me of ruining her life, of overreacting, of being a monster for exposing her like this. And finally, when the anger faded, it turned into begging. Please, James. I lost my job. My family won't talk to me. Everyone is turning against me. I have nothing left. Please, just talk to me. I smiled, taking a sip of my coffee, watching her messages pile up on my screen. She had no idea how good this felt. Because now she finally knew what it felt like to have everything taken away. She thought she had hit rock bottom. She had no idea I was about to take away the only thing she had left. She had already lost her reputation, her family's trust, her comfortable life. She had been exposed for exactly what she was, a liar, a cheater, a woman who had destroyed her own world with her own choices. But there was still one thing left, something she was still clinging to, and I wasn't going to let her keep it. My boss was finished. By midday, news of his scandal had spread through the company. His business meetings were under full investigation, and corporate had already frozen his accounts. I knew exactly how these things worked. By the end of the week, he'd be fired, blacklisted, and completely unemployable. A man who had spent years building his empire was about to lose it all over one mistake, thinking he could take what was mine. And my wife? She was spiraling. Her texts had gone from apologizing to begging to pure desperation. She had nowhere to go. Her parents had disowned her. Her friends had abandoned her. Her career was dead in the water. She was homeless, jobless, and completely alone. I knew she would come to me eventually, and I was waiting. She showed up that night, standing outside my door, looking nothing like the woman who used to be my wife. Her hair was a mess, her eyes puffy from crying, her entire body trembling like she could barely hold herself together. She knocked once, then again, then, finally, her voice, small, broken. "James, please." I didn't answer. She knocked again, more desperate this time. "I don't have anywhere else to go." I finally opened the door, leaning against the frame, staring down at the wreckage of the woman who once thought she had me fooled. She swallowed hard, waiting for me to give her mercy. But I had none left to give. "You did this to yourself," I said, my voice calm. Tears welled in her eyes. I know I did. But you don't have to destroy me completely." I smirked. "Oh, but I do." Her breath hitched. "James, I loved you." I laughed, an actual laugh. "No, you loved using me. You loved cheating on me. But now, you have nothing, and I don't feel bad for you." Her lip quivered. "Where am I supposed to go?" I shrugged. "Not my problem." She stared at me, finally realizing that there was no way out. No excuses left. No tricks to play. She had lost. She turned slowly, walking away, her shoulders shaking as she disappeared into the night. I shut the door behind her and smiled. She had spent months thinking she could take everything from me. And now, I was the one who took everything from her. She thought she had nothing left to lose. But I wasn't done watching her suffer. Olivia had spent months sneaking around, lying to my face, laughing behind my back with my boss, believing she was invincible. Now she had nothing. Her job was gone. Her reputation was in ruins. Her Her family had disowned her, and she had no home to go back to. She was officially a nobody, but I wasn't satisfied yet. She had walked away from my doorstep broken, but not completely destroyed. There was still one last thing she had left, one final shred of dignity she was holding onto, and I was going to rip it away like she had done to me. She was staying at a motel now. Cheap, disgusting. The kind of place she had never imagined herself in. I knew because I had tracked her down, not because I cared, but because I wanted to see the full extent of her downfall. The woman who had once looked down on others, who had spent years pretending to be better than everyone else, was now living out of a single suitcase, struggling to afford basic meals. And it was glorious. But she still had him. My ex-boss. The man who had ruined his entire career for her. The man she had thrown our marriage away for. He was her last hope. The only one left who could save her. So I made sure he wouldn't. I had already destroyed his career. Made sure corporate had everything they needed to erase him from the company forever. But I wasn't done yet. Because I knew one thing about him. He was weak. He was the type of man who thrived when things were good. But the second his world started crumbling, he would cut ties and run. And that's exactly what I forced him to do. I leaked one last piece of information. Proof that he had been misusing company funds to support Olivia. Expensive gifts, lavish dinners, a few business trips that had nothing to do with work. And when that news got out, he had no choice but to throw her under the bus. The next day, I got a message from Olivia. He left me. He won't even pick up my calls. James, please, I don't know what to do. I smiled. She was officially alone. The man she had ruined her life for, the man she had risked everything for, had tossed her aside the second she became a burden. She had betrayed me for him. And now, he had betrayed her, too. I didn't reply. She had spent months believing I was blind. Now she had to live with the fact that I had seen everything, and taken it all away. She had nothing left. No job, no family, no lover. And I wasn't done yet. Olivia had built her life on deception, weaving a story where she always came out on top, where she controlled the narrative, where she got to cheat and still play the victim. But now, there was no one left to believe her lies. No one left to save her. No one left to care. She had sent me dozens of messages in the past week, each one more desperate than the last. She had gone through the full cycle, apologies, anger, bargaining, and now she was at the final stage. Desperation. James, please. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I have no one else to turn to. Please just talk to me. I ignored her. She thought if she could just get me to listen, she could still manipulate her way back into my life. She didn't understand that I wasn't the same man she had been playing all those months ago. I was the one in control now. And then, just when I thought she had finally given up, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring, but then it rang again, and again. I picked up, already knowing who it was. Her voice was hoarse, weak, like she had been crying for hours. James. I said nothing. Just let the silence stretch until she broke. I don't know what to do, she whispered, her voice cracking. I have nothing left. She choked on her words. I don't even have enough money for food. I smirked. Good. She had spent months laughing at me behind my back. Months acting like she was untouchable, like she could cheat, lie, and destroy our marriage without consequences. And now? Now she was begging me to save her. I finally spoke. Not my problem. She sobbed. James, please. Please, what? I asked coldly. Please pretend like none of this happened? Like you didn't throw everything away for a man who just abandoned you? She let out a shaky breath. You thought you were better than me, Olivia, I continued. You thought you were smarter, untouchable. And now? Now you don't even have enough money to eat? She whimpered. I know I messed up. Messed up? I laughed, shaking my head. No, Olivia. You ruined yourself. She broke then, sobbing into the phone, completely shattered. But I felt nothing. She deserved this. Every tear, every moment of suffering. She had once said to her lover, James would never leave me. Even if he found out, he wouldn't have the guts to do anything about it. Now, she was crying to that same man, begging for a second chance, begging for help, begging to not be alone. and I was the one watching her crumble. I let the silence drag out before I spoke my final words. You deserve everything that's happened to you. And the best part? I paused, letting her hang on my every word. I don't even care anymore. Then I hung up. She had nothing left. She thought I'd take her back. She thought I still cared. She was about to learn that I had already moved on. Olivia had spent months living in her own delusion, thinking that if she begged hard enough, if she cried long enough, I would forgive her. She didn't realize that the man she had once controlled, the man she had played for a fool, was gone. Her texts slowed down after that last call. The desperation turned to silence. No more late night pleas. No more, I miss you messages. No more pathetic attempts at getting me to feel something. And I didn't. Because Olivia was nothing to me now. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding. I wasn't just recovering from what she did. I was thriving. I had moved into a new place, one that didn't remind me of her. I had cut off every toxic connection, erased her completely from my life. And for the first time in years, I felt free. One night, I went out with some old friends, something I hadn't done in a long time. It felt good to be out again, surrounded by people who actually gave a damn about me. And that's when I saw her. Not Olivia. Someone new. She was sitting at the bar alone, sipping a drink, flipping through a book, completely unbothered by the chaos around her. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't playing games. She looked real. She glanced up and caught me staring. And instead of looking away, she smirked. And just like that, I knew. Olivia was the past. And I was finally looking toward the future. She had spent months thinking she could cheat and still have everything. Now, I had everything. And she had nothing. She was just a mistake in my past. I had a new life to build, without her. Olivia was nothing to me now. A ghost. A reminder of what happens when you put trust in the wrong person. She had spent months thinking she could cheat and still win, that she could lie, betray, and walk away unscathed. Now she was just another cautionary tale. I didn't check her messages anymore. Didn't wonder where she was. Didn't care if she was still struggling to find her way back to the life she had destroyed with her own hands. She was irrelevant. I focused on myself. I hit the gym harder than ever. I got promoted. Her affair had cost my boss everything, but it had opened doors for me. I traveled, did things I had always wanted to do but had put on hold because of her. I was reclaiming my life. And then there was her. The woman from the bar. The one who had smirked when she caught me staring. The one who hadn't tried to impress me, who hadn't played games. She was different. She was real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something new, excitement. We talked. We laughed. We spent time together without expectations, without lies. She didn't know about my past, didn't know about Olivia, didn't know that I had once been married to a woman who had destroyed everything. And I liked it that way, because Olivia wasn't worth mentioning. One night, months later, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't need to answer to know who it was. Olivia. I let it ring, and then I blocked the number. She was nothing, and I was never looking back.